Okay, I think I'm finally here. So sorry for the delay. I have to do it through Zoom until I can figure out what the issue was on YouTube, but I think I think it was just because my webcam was glitching. So, whatever. I'm here. Good morning. Please say hello in the chat so I know who's here. It's your boy, Mix Mercury. Welcome to my channel. I don't have a clue what I'm doing today. I went live yesterday with my business partner and ex-partner Emilia to talk about how stressed out I get. No, it wasn't really to talk about how stressed out I get, but it was to talk about um just going live and why it makes me uncomfortable. And the intention was to be unmasked and to just show up because I'm really bad at showing up sometimes and to just let myself talk and think out loud. So I've decided to just try to go live every day for the next month so that I can get over myself and practice using my voice. So that's what I'm doing. And if you're here and you want to come along for the ride with me, welcome aboard. So, why am I doing this? Well, I struggle with a lot of self-doubt. I struggle with a lot of imposter syndrome, and I struggle with, I don't know, getting a coherent thought out sometimes without overthinking beforehand what it is that I'm going to say or what I'm going to do as like a form of, I don't know, perfectionism or something like that. And so I end up procrastinating and then just not doing anything and sitting on ideas forever and ever. And then people never know what my work is about or what I offer unless they've been around for the last few years. So what I wanted to try and describe today is why this is so hard for me and what this has to do with my newer practice as a coach. So, as many of you may know, I'm a practicing astrologer, a professional astrologer, and I've been doing astrology slash astrotherapy style readings since January 2021. And I do have a business that is my official business. I've done probably 500 readings, no exaggeration, since starting this business. And it's been a long journey of trusting that I know enough to actually share my thoughts and opinions and advice with other people. But it's really intimidating. And somehow, 3, 4 years later, it hasn't gotten any less intimidating. I mean, doing readings has gotten easier, but doing things like that require me making content like lives or workshops or lectures or whatever it is, like those seem to never get easier. And I think part of the reason is because I will do one and then I beat myself up about it, whether it went well or it didn't go well. And then I won't do them again because I'm stuck in a spiral of self-doubt and shame and embarrassment or whatever it is, self-criticism maybe. But I recently, oh no, my camera, hold on. You can still hear me though, I think. I recently did a workshop, not a workshop. I recently did a training where hold on. Okay, I'm back. I recently did a relationship coach training that also required me to do a relationship mastery course that I do for myself. Because you have to do the work for yourself before you can do it for other people, is like the philosophy of the school. And the school was called The Relationship School by Jason Gaddis. If you want to look into it, he also has a podcast and lots of free content all over the different social medias, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. And the whole reason I did that course, hey Eric, good morning. The whole reason I did that course partially was a business move. I did want to learn more about client work, especially like therapy style client work that, doesn't require you to go back to school and get a master's or a PhD. Because I did get a degree in psychology, but I was like, I don't want to go back to school. It's really expensive, especially for graduate degrees. and I just didn't want to rack up that much debt. But I did hear about his coaching program after following his podcast for so many years on his podcast and figured that was still enough of an investment and practice specifically geared towards relationship work. Sorry, my camera froze again. Um, Hold on one second. Let me try something else real quick. Okay, should be back. Okay. Um, I wanted to try something different, and the course was like enough that you can become a coach, a certified level 1 relationship coach. It was specific towards relationship coaching and not so much like therapy in this long process that, seems to go on and on and on of just like processing and self-reflection. Like you actually get to learn tools and action steps and skills on how to navigate your relationships. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, this seems like the route that I'm trying to go, especially because I do want to get more into synastry with astrology at some point. Well, not at some point. That's something that I think about regularly, right? And I was like, okay, this seems like a good fit. And I love that it challenges you to do the work as well instead of just teaching you how to coach other people. Well, it's about a year-long course, and you can spend about 6 months on the personal part, 6 months on the coaching part, or there are parts where it overlaps depending on when you join the course. And long story short, I did the whole thing, relationship mastery and relationship coach training. I graduated in May of this year, 2024. And instead of what I imagined would happen was I have all this knowledge finally. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I have this new skill and I want to use it with people and shift my astrologer practice more into coaching. What actually ended up happening was I realized myself how I wasn't as good at relationships as I thought I was. And I wasn't as, I don't know, I lost a lot of confidence because I just fell into the shame spiral of I don't know, realizing how much I didn't know. And I'm a person who likes to appear as though I know things and I can be an expert and I can be knowledgeable and educated and informed and not get it wrong. And so what actually happened, hi Olivia, good to see you here too. Um, I realized that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. And I also realized that the way I had been behaving in my own relationships uh, was not as great as I thought, for lack of a better way to put it. I definitely was, at least in my last handful of relationships since being an astrologer, I was definitely doing a lot of trying to fix my partners or solve all of their problems or um, my longer standing relationship issue was always trying to be perfect and always trying to be good enough and be good and never get anything wrong and never do anything wrong. And just I have myself up on this pedestal and with these really strict high standards. And it actually caused me to project a lot of that onto my partners in the way that, like, my own feelings of not being good enough or not being worthy or whatever they were ended up getting in a roundabout way projected onto my partners to where they never felt like they were good enough or doing enough for me, which is really fascinating how that would work out. And maybe I can explain that more another time since I'm going to go live every day, but just to keep my mind on the subject. And having recently gone through, I went through two breakups with my previous partner, Emilia, during this course. So it was kind of like, who am I to be giving people relationship coaching and relationship advice when I can't even figure out how to do relationships on my own, when I can't even figure out how to be less isolated in my daily life because of COVID and everyone's different preferences around masking and all of these other things where I've isolated myself even from my family members. So it's just been months of me feeling like if I can't even make these steps and these transformations in my own life, at least at the rate that I would like to, then who am I to be trying to coach other people? And that, my friends, has kept me stuck, like I said, in the loop of shame and self-deprecation and self-doubt for so long that I've struggled to advertise my services and I've struggled to market my services because I feel like I need to be polished and perfect. And once again, that same curse of needing to be polished and perfect and never get it wrong before I can start marketing myself. And what's funny about this is that one, coaching is really not even about me being some kind of perfect expert who knows everything and can solve people's problems. That's not even what it's about. And I think even when I was in the course, I still had this complex the whole time where I was like, I need to be really good at this. And I need everyone in this course to know that I'm really good at this. I need to be a good coach. And I actually kind of unintentionally I was going to say unintentionally neglected, but that's not really true. I think I just really struggled with the relationship aspect of the course, as in building relationships with my classmates beyond just doing our practice calls together or building relationships with, good morning, Jada, building relationships with people outside of the course, even like my ongoing relationships. I was struggling with a lot of those. I ended a lot of relationships and um yeah, just by the end of the course, I realized that I had only done partially done what I'd set out to do, and I still had a lot of work to do otherwise. And that's okay, right? Like that's not a bad thing. But my point, yes, was that coaching is not about me being the expert. I think being an astrologer, I really felt like I needed to be an expert because astrology is fucking complex, first of all. Like you really, there's so much to know about astrology and so many people trying to be professional astrologers that I mean the whole field is geared towards getting it right and predicting the future and being able to know things about people without them even having to tell you and all of these different things, which I don't even think that's what astrology is about, right? But that's the vibe that or the I don't know the expectation, maybe the unspoken expectation that I felt like was on me as an astrologer and therefore would be on me as a coach or on me as a therapist if I ever decided to pursue being a therapist. So now I'm here and realizing how much I am sitting on a lot of knowledge and expertise and truth that I do actually have and that I have accumulated through the, again, 500 hours of um, astrotherapy sessions that I've done, and then the added hours of coaching practice and everything else. Like I have so much that I know in my head, and I can't let my struggle or my apprehension of just getting the information out in this particular way stop me from just getting the information out. Right. So that's why I'm here to just practice getting the information out and going on my long rambles and allowing myself to go on tangents and to have ADHD brain and just let it be seen and not have to be so packaged and polished like everybody else on the internet with a business. And I'm sure a lot of them don't even feel that way either. I think we all just are doing our best. And so I'm just gonna do my best. I did want to share something that Emilia said to me that I feel like really does encapsulate coaching in the way that I want to do it as an astrologer. And what they said to me as I was sharing all of these things with them last night after our live about like what I really want is for people to trust me. I want people to trust me um and to believe in the work and to feel like they can come to me with their problems, whatever they are, and that we'll figure it out somehow. And Emilia was like, well, isn't that what you do anyway? Like, isn't that the point? And I was like, well, yeah, it is, and that is what I do, but I feel like it comes off so unpolished and so unprofessional and so sloppy and messy and blah blah blah. And they were like, well, isn't that your thing? Isn't your thing to be unprofessional and unserious and unpolished and imperfect, like to just be human? Like, isn't that your whole brand, to be professionally unprofessional? And I was like, I guess it is. I hadn't actually considered that that was my brand. If you even want to call it that, right? But that is my personality and that is my growth edge in my own life, is to be imperfect and to just be human and have flaws and to just show up. And they've even mentioned to me previously where like I have Scorpio in the sixth house. Mind you, I'm in a Scorpio perfection, by the way. So this is a good astro coaching moment. I'm in a sixth house Scorpio perfection, and I have personal planets there, Venus and Jupiter. And the sixth house is about work and working and coworkers, and also the duties and obligations and ways that you perform service for, out in the world. Service oriented jobs and things like that. And I've always been a person in service oriented jobs. I've always made friends at work. I've always enjoyed working with other people. And one thing that I hadn't considered as I'm having my Jupiter opposition now, with Jupiter being in Taurus, is that a lot of the reason I'm feeling these shame spirals and this self-doubt and all of this stuff is because I'm unprofessional. It's because I'm doing something different than the way people traditionally do entrepreneurship. It's like, yeah, I could do the quote touristy thing of being polished and aesthetic and having a script and all of this other stuff that comes off like, I'm some boss ass dude who just really knows his shit and, you know, whatever, whatever, whatever. I'm running this business and everything's going great and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like playing this role. But the whole point of having Scorpio in the sixth house is that, yeah, I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to show up on a live on YouTube shirtless when I haven't had top surgery yet as a trans guy and just talk to people off the dome. And whether it makes sense or not isn't my priority so much as I'm just being a person in a way that allows other people to also be a person. So I loved that they called me out like that and they were like, "Well, you got Scorpio in the sixth house. Like, of course, you're gonna do things differently than ironically they would probably do as someone who does have Jupiter and Taurus, but in the third house." And so I just really appreciated that. We always hold up a mirror to each other, and that was a way that was something I really needed to hear, as like, it's okay for you to be this way. And that was what I was just sitting on last night after doing this call and beating myself up about, not showing up exactly how I wanted to in this quote perfect way. Was like, I'm actually worthy of love and attention and care, and um it's still worth it for people to show up and to pay me to be their coach, even if I don't show up as this like even if I don't show up in a particular way that people maybe expect a coach or an expert or whoever to show up in this role. So, um, that was one part of it. And then the other thing that they said that was super helpful was, um, so I'll expose this a little bit, but I joke about, especially as someone who has, Mars and Leo and the sun in Capricorn and being Saturn ruled, that I always end up my narrative is that I always end up being someone's dad or someone's father, like, "Daddy, see me, daddy, help me, daddy, save me," like always daddy. Um, and the role of being a father is like to be wise and to validate and to support and encourage and all of this other stuff, right? And so I always feel like there's a way that people see me as daddy. There's also a way that people see me as mommy with having a first house moon. And so like hold space for my feelings and help me emotionally process and all of these things. And if you know my chart, like the sun and the moon, I was born pretty close to a full moon and uh all that stuff going on, right? And so what they said that was really funny was like, I mean, yeah, even if you are being daddy, they didn't say it exactly like this, I'm paraphrasing, but they were like, even if you are being daddy, it's like you could be the dad that's like, hey, son, you need help with your homework. And then the kid is like, yeah, I need help doing long division. It's so hard. I can't do it by myself. And then dad is just like, well, son, I haven't done a long division problem or a word problem in decades, but we can figure it out together. And then they were like, and the kid is just glad that somebody is there to help. The kid is just glad that they don't have to figure it out by themselves, whether dad knows exactly how to do the math problem or not. Dad is there as a support system, as a person of encouragement and I don't know, to help you build your confidence to do the thing yourself because it's not really about whether dad knows how to teach you how to do math problems exactly the way that your teacher would teach you. It's just the fact that dad is sitting there with you as you struggle to do this thing that's really hard for you. And that's what I want to do for people. That is what I do for people, but that's what I want to do for people as a coach, especially as a relationship coach, where I feel like um there's no one way to do relationships and the way that people do relationships in their specific container, whether that is romantic relationships or friendships or family relationships or community building or whatever it is that it's going to look different depending on the people who are in the situation. And so what I never want to do is say that you have to do relationships in this particular way. You have to follow this formula. You have to follow this format or do this skill exactly the way that I say it. Otherwise, your relationship is doomed to fail. Like, that's not really what coaching is. Not really what relationship coaching is. It's also not what astrology is. And if I may step on a soapbox for a moment, I have a real gripe personally with astrologers who can be so fatalistic and so um rigid with their interpretations of signs and planets and and all of the different things. Now, granted, I've definitely been that way and can still be that way because the way that I understand astrology works so well for me that I struggle to understand the ways that other people use it. And at the end of the day, you come to a conclusion that everybody is in agreement with and that everybody resonates with who's in that conversation. That's all that really matters. And so for me as an astrologer, something I've also had to release is that even my interpretations as I give them are not always going to be correct and may not always resonate. But the point isn't that I get it right specifically in the way that my client needs to hear it. The thing that I do as an astrologer and have always done as an astrologer is suggest a theme that I've seen be consistent with a certain placement or configuration and share that with the person who is coming to me asking me to read their chart. And I ask them, what does this look like for you in your life? How does this placement show up for you in your life? Because just because we all have a Gemini moon doesn't mean that we all have Mercury that rules that Gemini moon. And it doesn't mean that we all have Mercury in the eighth house that rules that Gemini moon conjunct the sun that's also ruled by Saturn in Aquarius in its own sign. Like, that's my chart. So that's my experience of the moon in Gemini, but that's not going to be every person's experience of the moon in Gemini because there are 11 other signs that the ruler of that moon could be in, and then 12 other houses that the ruler of the moon in that sign could be juxtaposed with in a whole entire ecosystem of a chart that varies literally hour by hour, depending on the day. And there's so much nuance and so much variability and so many differences in each person and that's what I love about astrology is that you can see those differences and therefore whenever I'm entering that reading I can't just copy and paste an explanation that I would have used for a previous client for the client in front of me. I have to ask questions. I have to get to know them. I have to understand what it's like to be them and see things from their perspective and then use all of my prerequisite knowledge and coaching skills and everything else that I've ever learned in my life, yoga teacher trainings and fitness and being a former athlete and psychology and sociology and everything else. I have to intuitively lean on that knowledge within the context of the person sitting in front of me. And what I love about coaching is that I can do that without even using a chart. Now, granted, the way that my brain works at this point is that I'm always going to process through astrology. And so if other people want to do that and want to learn how to do that with someone else, with their father sitting with them, walking them through the process or being with them through the process, that's what I do. That's what I excel at. And I want it to build autonomy and capacity and confidence in my clients. And with coaching, like I was saying, even if I don't use a chart, like I've heard the themes enough that I can kind of deepen someone's relationship with that theme in their own life and, go back and do some time traveling, go back in time and figure out where did this pattern first come from? Where did these beliefs first come from? Where did this cycle begin? And what was the experience? And how is that experience still with you today? Because it's not about, processing your trauma or your life experiences or whatever to the point that you don't get affected by them anymore. It's really about like, what did that experience teach you? What did you learn? And not that there's a specific lesson to learn, but what did you learn or understand about yourself and the world through this formative experience that still affects you today? And how can we shift your perspective of that experience in a way that's more in alignment with the context that you're having that experience today versus the context that you were having it as a child who really had no power or agency or autonomy. It's like trying to fit into clothes that you were wearing as a child as an adult. You can't. The clothes are literally a different size, but you might still like that same style of clothing, so you just have to get the big person version of it and wear that instead of the toddler shoes that you don't fit anymore. You can still be you. The whole point is that you can be you as you are today in the present moment, in the present context, in your present circumstances, and then tying in the astrology aspect of like time. And that's the next thing that I wanted to say was, why do I feel so strongly about integrating astrology with coaching? And it's the time aspect of astrology. Astrology is really just the divine clock. It's just letting you know what time it is and what to do during this time versus a different time. In the same way that you're probably, if you're thinking about just how a clock works and the function of time in your life, and we'll say with driving in traffic, like you probably don't want to, if you live in a big city, you probably don't want to try to travel across town during rush hour at 5 o'clock when you know everybody else and their mama is going to be on the highway in the way. It's going to take you an extra hour to get to where you need to go. So instead of trying to make that trip during rush hour, you would probably wait a couple of hours after or start a couple of hours before so that you can do what you need to do before rush hour hits. That's how I like to use astrology. It's not to necessarily predict something that's going to happen, although you can kind of anticipate that every single day everybody's going to be getting off work and out of school at the same time, and therefore traffic is going to be backed up. That doesn't mean that you can't take action and make that trip during rush hour. It just means these are going to be the outcomes or the consequences if you do. Um, but there are ways that you can avoid traffic, right? There are different routes that you can take. There's ways that you can break up the trip along the way. You have options whenever you know what time it is and what you're working with during that particular moment in time. So that's why I like to use astrology with coaching because it gives this added layer of, okay, you've shared with me what the problem is that we're tackling together, but the way that you're seeing or interpreting this problem, is potentially is in the context of, something that happened years ago when the time was different. So now that the time is different, um, and you've changed and you've grown and you've acquired all of this knowledge that you didn't have initially when you were dealing with this issue, um, how can you use your updated knowledge and information and the present day context to solve this problem now and maybe not run into traffic as bad? Does that make sense? That's why it's so important for me to tie these things together. Because the relationship that you're in today, whether that is, again, with a partner, a friend, a family member, is not the same as it was 5, 10, 15 years ago because you are not the same and they are not the same as they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. This relationship that you're in is different than the relationship that you were in last year or a few months ago or several years ago or that one person who broke your heart whenever you were in high school and you've never gotten over that, right? Or like for me, I had a series of relationships in college and bless you people if you happen to listen to this. And I refer to those relationships, maybe not those people, but those relationships as like the horsemen of the apocalypse because for me those were like I'd had relationships before that that were really formative, but these particular relationships when I was in college like really fucked with my nervous system in a way that I carry that with me, those patterns with me in my relationships today, and the people that I'm dealing with today have nothing to do with those relationships from college, or they have nothing to do with like yeah, maybe they're mirroring a dynamic or a pattern that I experienced in those initial relationships, but that's not because of them. That's because of me. I'm the common denominator between all of my relationships. I'm the person showing up to these relationships and bringing my Jupiter and my sun with me, right? My context and my perception with me. And it's my responsibility to know when I'm bringing an old story or an old narrative into a relationship instead of again dealing with the person in front of me and actually trying to understand and deal with them as they exist in the present moment, even though they may remind me of some old shit. And to me, that's like 90% of what being in relationship, intimate relationship, or partnership with somebody is about, is seeing that person and understanding that person as they are today and as they continue to change and grow and not staying locked in this one perception or narrative that you have of them. And it's easy to talk about that in like the negative sense of, this person cheated or this person broke my heart or they did this thing to me and then always seeing them as this one mistake that they made with you. Um, that is one version of what I'm talking about. But there's also the other version, which I'm definitely guilty of, where I always see this person in the positive light that I saw them initially in the relationship. And I always see our relationship through the same rose-colored glasses that I had in the beginning whenever, you're high on having a crush on this person. And it distorts your perception of them and of reality and of the reality of the relationship. And I tend to want to hold on to the illusion because it feels good. It's like drugs. And this is a real thing. Your brain in the beginning of relationships floods you with all these feel good chemicals so that you'll maintain the connection and that you'll remember how that felt and that have that experience locked into your body and always be trying to get back to that. So I would like always be trying to get back to when it felt so good and it was so innocent and so pure. Like, can't we just get back to that? But the reality is like things have changed, things have happened. Time has gone on since then, and those feel good chemicals, they aren't there anymore in the same way that they were at the beginning of the relationship. Like, we have to adapt. I have to be open to seeing things as they are now and accepting that if I want to feel those floods of feel good chemicals, like that has to be created between us. And it's not going to come about because of all of the novelty of not knowing a person. It's going to come from the intentional effort to continuously learn about this new person in front of me and to never assume once again that I know everything there is to know about this person. that I've already learned everything there is to learn about this person. If I want to stay engaged and enthusiastic about the relationship, no matter what initially caused things to change, good or bad, or time, I have to be willing to continue to learn and be curious about the person in front of me and about myself in the relationship. And that can be really fucking hard to do when there's trauma, when there is actual hurt and pain and resentment that's gone unacknowledged. And what I love about relationship coaching is that it does help you to see things as they are. And astrology helps you to see things as they are right now. Um, not necessarily objectively, but subjectively and objectively enough that you can, again, shift your perspective in the way that you orient around that situation, that conflict, that person, whatever it is. And that's an ongoing process and skill that has to be developed. There's not going to be one magic pill, one magic session, one magic phrase or technique that's going to eliminate all of your problems. You have to keep showing up. You have to keep doing it. You have to keep being bad at it and messing it up and getting it wrong before you get it right. And the beauty of that, and the beauty of that in the relational context, especially, is that um, the getting it wrong and then making it right process in a relationship, the wow, I really fucked up. I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I'm gonna do my best to make this right with you. And then getting that grace and that forgiveness from this person that you trust, and vice versa, and making mistakes and repairing it, making mistakes, repairing it, making mistakes, repairing it, coming back together, separating, coming back together over and over again. That's what creates security in the relationship. That's what creates trust in the relationship. That's what creates safety in the relationship, is knowing that you can get it wrong and mess up unintentionally, of course, um, and unconsciously, usually. You can get it wrong, and there's an opportunity to make it right between the both of you. Um, I think we really think that we have to be perfect and other people have to be perfect in order for relationships to last, and things have to be rainbows and butterflies the entire time. And that once we start fighting or arguing, there's something wrong and the relationship is doomed if we can't figure this out. No, not true. You're always going to have Mars and Venus, different moons. Sometimes, maybe you have the same placements, whatever, but there's always going to be Mars as your differences, Venus as your similarities, Moon as your needs, Saturn as both of your different experiences of reality, and Jupiter as your different narratives for reality, and Mercury and the different styles of communication. There's always going to be all of these different placements in your relationship that you will constantly have to be in collaboration around, and in conversation around, to understand one another and to navigate the relationship. But that's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it fun. That's what keeps it sexy. The differences and the disagreements and you being a different person from me is why we like each other. It's why we're drawn to each other, because there's something in you that I haven't fully come to terms with in myself. And the only way that I feel like I can get access to that thing is through you. And therefore, I'm going to do all of these things unconsciously to keep putting you in that polarizing position from me so that I can keep doing my familiar thing and I can keep blaming you for doing that thing that I don't like, that I actually want to embody, that I actually want to be better at, that I actually want to um embrace in myself, but couldn't for whatever reason. So anyway, um I've been on here rambling for how long? 39 minutes? That's pretty good. Um I think I've said everything that I need to say for today. I want to keep this relatively short. But the point is, yeah, I'm gonna try to find things to talk about every day, whether it's astrologically relevant or not. And most likely is astrologically relevant because there are no coincidences in this field, right? But I want to keep talking and I want to keep offering things. and just practice being passionate about this thing out loud in a way that hopefully you guys want to work with me because I want to work with you. Like, yes, I need to make money. We live in capitalism. I have credit card debt. I'm seeing a physical therapist that's charging me $120 a session because I don't want to have hip pain anymore. And I need money. Just to put that on the table. I don't need to come up with some kind of psychologically manipulative marketing scheme. You know what the deal is. This is an exchange of goods for a service, or this is an exchange of goods and services for money. And so, yes, you will have to pay me, but it's worth it. It's worth it because I know we all need help. And the help that we need is really not somebody to tell us what to do. The help is that somebody can hold our hands while we are doing the thing, or to at the very least bear witness to us doing this really difficult thing, whatever it is that we have little to no experience or knowledge of how to do. I just want to show you love and support on the way. And a definition that I learned of love in my course that I really appreciate is that love looks like challenge and support. So, yeah, sometimes I will hold your hand and rub your back and hold space for your feelings and validate you and tell you that, you know, it is really fucked up that that thing happened or that this is the situation that you're in. And there are also going to be times where I don't hold your hand and I have to take a step back and I have to let you have your experience and sometimes even nudge you a little bit in a direction that you probably don't want to go. I won't say that you don't want to go, but nudge you in a direction that is uncomfortable, but of service, in service of your growth, because growth is not comfortable. Growth doesn't feel good. I used to get growing pains in my knees all the time when I was a child, wake me up in the middle of the night and I'd cry about it. And I actually don't feel like it was enough. I should be taller, but I'm not. But, you know, shit happens. So the growth still happened. I'm still here today, and growth doesn't always look one way and it's not always linear. In fact, few things are linear. So I would like to challenge and support you and see and understand you and be curious about you and allow you to cultivate that curiosity about yourself and about the world around you. So if you want to book a session with me, or if you want to book a free consultation call with me, shoot me a message. You can send me an email at mix.mercuryastro@gmail.com. You can shoot me a DM. You can go to my website and give me a little bit of time to post um, the free consultation link so that you can just book a free 15-30 minute call with me to just figure out what the issue even is and how coaching would work for you, how astrotherapy would work for you, how a solar return could work for you, and a personal year ahead reading. Because that's all that I want to offer. Um, that's all that I want to offer. I don't want to come up with a million different types of services and overwhelm you with options when there's really just three things that I do. I can give you insight into your year ahead. I can help you with your day to day. We can come up with a plan to conquer an issue that you have, or we can process whatever's going on and not solve any problems. But you will leave feeling a little bit more secure and empowered and confident to make decisions and trust yourself and fuck around and find out with, you know, at least a little bit of wisdom and insight or foresight or whatever into what you're getting yourself into. And when you mess up and get it wrong and fall or fall apart, I will be here to help you put yourself back together, get back up, get back on the horse, and try again as your loving stand-in Astro Father, Sky Daddy, Saturn Man. So, um, that's all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for participating in the chat. I know I didn't read very many of your chats. I would like actually to see just some of the things that y'all have said because I appreciate the commentary. But I will be back again tomorrow, maybe around the same time or later in the day, whatever. And the day after that, and the day after that until November, and we'll see what happens. Um, yes. Coaching is not about me being the expert. Absolutely. Um, I don't think about you as being unpolished or messy. You just be. Thank you for that affirmation. Um, Bree says that's why I love electional astrology. What's going to happen is going to happen, but I can try to pick the most auspicious dates possible to do or not do a thing in response to whatever the astro conditions are. Yes, absolutely. Um, I don't practice electional astrology as much, but sometimes I do whenever I'm like scheduling things way in advance, like workshops or um, things like that. But what I've honestly found is whenever I just lead with my intuition in the sense that I know what my schedule looks like, I know what my day to day looks like, and I know, the general landscape of when people do and don't have time for things and stuff like that. Um, you tend to, the astrology is going to astrology no matter what. Uh, and just to offer a brief example before I go, I know I said I was going to leave like three times, but something really cool that happened, and then I'll stop, was that I kind of for me it felt impulsive, but I kind of like just up and decided to move apartments one day. I was having a series of issues at my last apartment that were just like pissing me off. And it's been 2 years of living somewhere that was just not a good fit for me and was actively poorly managed and had a lot of structural issues and just pest issues and all this stuff, right? So I was just like, I'm sick of living here. My mom had just so happened to send me a listing of the apartment complex right next door that I thought was too expensive for me, but was actually within my price range and cost less than what I was paying at my other apartment. So I was like, let me just go check it out. And I just so happened to go look at it. I want to say on the day that something was conjunct my ascendant degree and I didn't even realize it. And Mercury was about to station retrograde and all this stuff. This was like 2 months ago, but I wasn't aware of all of that. I was just like, let me just go see. Went to look at the apartment. She was like, hey, we have a look and lease special. I'll give you a deal if you sign a lease in 2 days. I was like, bet, let me think about it. Slept on it. Came back after, on the 5th of July and was like, I want the lease. Here's my deposit. And she was like, okay, cool. When are you going to move in? And I was like, well, I have to give a 60-day notice. Looked at my calendar. I was like, well, I have to work on these days, blah, blah, blah. Just picked a date, September 11th. Let me move in. And she's like, okay, bet. And didn't even think about it for a while because I couldn't believe that me, a Capricorn, actually made a quote impulsive decision or an intuitive decision, if you will. But some time had passed and I was like, wait, let me look and see just what the sky is supposed to look like on that move-in date, which I eventually changed to September 10th because I wanted to give myself an extra day to move in and then change my move-out day to September 12th, right? So I looked at the sky for those 3 days, and the context is I'm in a Mars ruled year, so anything Mars is doing, I'm doing. And it just so happened that on the day that I was scheduled to move, Mars in real time was on top of my moon in my natal chart. So that was one. The second thing was that Mercury in real time was on top of my Mars in my natal chart. Unplanned. And there were even more things besides that. I think something else, there were some other placements. Um, Maybe something in my fourth house that was square my moon and something else that just was like spot on. Of course, I would be moving on this day. And I was really worried that I would have health issues or something like that. But what ended up actually happening was that for 3 days straight, I was moving from second floor to second floor, going upstairs, downstairs in constant movement for 3 days straight. My legs hurt, my body hurt. I had to do a lot of cleaning. I was in so much pain, and then I was exhausted by the end of the week, but I still had to go to work and I still had to do all this other stuff. So, um, it being conjunct Mars being conjunct my second house ruler with the moon, right? Was like me spending a lot of money on housing, on moving, on movers, on groceries, on whatever it was. So it was just the astrology, whether I planned it or not. And that just kind of gave me even more faith that even if you don't know when exactly to take action based on looking at a chart, like if you are trying to plan, is that if you just move, again, you can reflect on that, whatever was going on in the sky at that moment. I guarantee you will find some kind of transit or dynamic going on with your chart that reflects whatever you were doing at that time. So that's why building self trust is so important for me and why I'm not so personally invested in prediction because you're going to do what you're going to do anyway. Um, Free will, is debatable in the sense that we move how we move when we feel like we need to move. Um, so yeah, if anything, that would validate trust in yourself that, of course, this would be happening at this time on this day while these things are happening in the sky. So yeah. Cool. That's all I have to say. Check out my website, mixmercuryastro.com. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/mixmercury. Follow me on Twitter at mixmercury. Follow me on Instagram at mixmercury. Follow me anywhere that at mixmercury takes you to a picture of my smiling ass face. And if you want to learn more things from me, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Um, I'll be around. So